المكتب التعاوني للدعوة والإرشاد وتوعية الجاليات بالأحساء.
يا لا له يا لا لا لي 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 يا لا له يا لا لا لي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. MashaAllah, a lot of young people here. Alhamdulillah. Now this is excellent. This is wonderful. So inshallah, we'll spend a couple of hours together this morning, and I'll get to. Do I need a microphone? Or is this fine? This is okay. But do you need the other microphone? You can. I mean, you're all close by, so I don't think it's necessary. How's the volume there? It's okay? All right, alhamdulillah. So we'll spend a couple of hours together, inshallah. I can't promise that I'll know all your names. Hopefully, you'll somewhat know my name. My name is Muhammad, last name Quadir. I'm originally from Kenya, but I spent close to about 20 years of my life in North America. And I've been here in Bahrain for quite some time. I spent some time in Malaysia as well, and in India. So that's a little bit about myself. Presently, I live here in Bahrain. And the current role that I have here in Discover Islam, I'm the head of Discover Islam in the US, but I'm also helping this organization here to restructure itself. So I've been appointed by the board here to be a consultant and to reconfigure Discover Islam here in Bahrain. My background is marketing, which is what I'm going to share with you, inshallah. I've tried to use some business approaches to Dawah. This is the unique thing that we're talking about. So the session today, like you see in your program, I hope you all got a program, is we'll start very briefly talking about Dawah, what it means to all of you. We'll talk a little bit more from a business standpoint in terms of a marketing approach. Then we'll go on to understanding our market, take a break, we'll understand our product, and finally we'll have what I call the art of Dawah. So before we go on, I'd like to get to know all of you a little bit better. Excellent, alhamdulillah. So we have a whole bunch of different students and a teacher, mashallah. It's so good to see young people like yourselves involved in this, and even younger people. This is something that we're hoping even here in Discover Islam we can get more young people involved. And honestly, I am so pleased to see you all, alhamdulillah. You know, may Allah reward you for taking this effort and coming here. But this is just wonderful, mashallah. What I want, the sessions that I do normally, they can last one day, they can even last 2 days. The same sessions that you have in front of you can take up to 2 days to do. But what I'm going to try to do is crunch it down to 2.5 hours, all of it. And part of the reason we can do that, inshallah, is that Brother Zuhair assured me that you're all professionals. Meaning you're students, you're fluent in English, you are quick on the uptake, you're used to learning and all, so you'll be able to take in this information far better and process it far better. But don't worry about it. If it becomes a bit too much, inshallah, in the next week, 2 weeks or so, I will give you notes to take with you and that you can use them yourself. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, can some of you tell me, or any one of you tell me, what do you understand by Da'wah? What is Da'wah? Since this is what we're talking about. Yes, brother?
Invite non-Muslims to Islam.
Okay. Any other definitions? Okay. So, inviting non-Muslims to Islam, outreach, reaching out to people. What else? How about converting?
Converting, not
Not really, no.
Not really. Okay. Anybody else?
Convey the message.
Convey the message. Are we here to convert?
Our responsibility is to convey, not to convert.
Alhamdulillah. Excellent. So, give me some verses of the Quran that you're familiar with that talk about the idea of da'wah. Right. What verse is that? Chapter or surah? And so Allah tells us in the Quran, this is the verse that you said, right? This is the one, right? Okay. So you're all very familiar with this. the verse before that, and there are many, many other verses. So the idea behind reminding you of this is that the work we're doing is very, very important work. It's work that is the work of the prophets, of the messengers. It's the work of the Sahaba. And this is indeed, if you could pass this on. These are just some verses of the Quran and some hadith that relate to da'wah. What would be a very good exercise for you to do when you, are you staying in some hotel tonight?
Yeah. No.
Okay. Or you're heading back.
Yeah.
But at some point in time in the course of the next few days, if you would make it a point to go and do some research, and these days you can just Google it, it's as easy as that. Look up all the verses of the Quran that deal with da'wah. Some may be very, very different, very different from what you think they are, but when you read them, you'll understand how important this is. So this is from a Quranic perspective. We all believe, we all understand, and Allah tells us. So we say, we listen and we obey. Then you have hadith. You have numerous hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that talk about the importance of da'wah. The entire life of the Prophet ﷺ was devoted to this. So yes, he ﷺ was a husband, a father, a general, a leader of the community, but his principal mission was to deliver the message of Islam. And by us taking on that responsibility on ourselves and doing it, we are doing the work of the prophets. This is indeed one of the highest categories of work that anybody can do. You know, you're training to be doctors, inshallah. Your job will be to save lives, right?
Sure.
But that's only the physical body that you're saving. When the person dies, what happens? Allah knows best. You know, whatever Allah wills, Allah knows best what's going to happen. But the job of the prophets, the job of da'wah, is to try to bring people where their eternal life is saved. Not just this physical body that we have right now. That's your job right now. But the job of da'wah is even greater than that, and I'm sure you understand that that's why you're here today. But there's another component to it as well, and that component is the world that we live in today. The world we live in today, if you pick up any newspaper, you go to the internet, look up, just type in Islam, and you'll get tons and tons of information out there. But most of that information is against Islam. On a daily basis, no less than 1,000 articles, video clips, blogs, you name it, are written against Islam and Muslims. Every single day. In all the languages of the world. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're here in Bahrain or in Saudi Arabia or anywhere else. You still have access to all this information. And sometimes, unfortunately, that information is also published in our local newspapers. Because frequently, the newspapers will just pick up an article from Associated Press or from Reuters, and they will just reprint it without thinking as to what impact this has or how it deals with Muslims. This is a simple fact of the world we live in today. Now, those of us who've been here a little bit longer can attest to this, that 20 years ago, it was a bit different. Yes, they would talk about Muslims as terrorists. They would talk about us in a negative light. But it would be shocking. It would be where Muslims would say, why are you saying this? 30 years ago, it was even more so shocking. 40 years ago, we were not even on the horizon there. We were not in the limelight. Today, it's every day. And it's so much ingrained into the minds of people that sometimes when I'm boarding a plane and another Muslim brother is getting on and he looks a bit nervous and he's sweating and all, I get worried as to what he's going to do. I mean, look at how much they've brainwashed us to thinking that way. This is the reality of the world we live in. Now, can you imagine what it will be like when these young brothers are standing here and they are 40-something years old, inshallah? What will the world be like at that time if it continues in this direction? Will you be able to do da'wah? Will you be able to invite and educate people about Islam? That's the challenge. So it's not only that from the Quran and from Hadith and from history and from all the Anbiya that have come before, and all the Sahabas, and all the companions to the companions, and all the great scholars in the last 1400 years that they have come. It is our responsibility today as well. So the first part of it is to understand why this is so important. The second is what Allah tells us as to how, and this is what you pointed out earlier, that we should do with wisdom, with words that uplift people, that make people feel good about themselves and good about this way of life. And do not fight, do not argue, reason, discuss, but in a manner that is better. You know, the idea of reasoning is also to use our brains, to use our minds. You are going in a, you're in a medical profession. You are in computers. I mean, in computers, you can't make any code. If it's 1 + 1, it will always be 2. It's not going to be 3, 4, or 5. And this is true for any science that you're doing. So when you're talking about reason, this is what we're talking about. That when we reason with people, it has to be rational. It has to be grounded on facts. It cannot be something that we make up. This all we will talk about a lot more. This last part of the verse is very important. And this is the part that frequently we as people who are involved in da'wah, da'is, we frequently forget. Certainly your Lord knows best who strays from his path and who is guided. Can you tell me why this is very important? I mean, all of it is important, but why is that particularly important for us? Think about it. Why do you think that's particularly important? Yes?
Because it depends on the hidayah.
Who Allah guides. What else? Can somebody else tell me something else about it? Or yourself even? Think about it. What does it tell you personally as a da'i as to what your attitude should be? Yes?
You just have to convey the message and leave the rest for Allah.
Okay, yes?
Well, we human beings have a choice. Well, so we just convey the message and it's their choice whether they embrace Islam or not.
These are all correct answers. But there's something else also that I'm looking for that is in this verse. Certainly your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knows best who strays and who is guided. Think about that. Who strays and who is guided. Allah knows best who it is. Do we know? Does it mean that if I'm the one who's doing da'wah, if I'm the one who's inviting people to Islam and I'm saying, you should do this, you should not do this is what Islam is all about and everything, do I know whether I'm on the right path or does Allah know? Allah knows. I don't know. So Allah knows best who's on the right path and who's not. This is very important for us to understand because it should bring in us the idea of humility, being humble. That we do not know what will become of us. We do not know that maybe there is a bit of arrogance, there is pride, kibr, riya, these sort of things are inside us. And when we are talking to somebody, we're looking down at that he's a kafir. He doesn't know about Islam. Look at this man, maybe in the back of our mind there's little whisperings like that this person is worse than us. So we have to be very careful. And this part is a very important reminder that yes, reason with people. Use the best speech, the best way of discussing, but also at the same time keep yourself in check. That I am not somebody big. I don't know what's going to become of me. So how can I tell that I'm better than this person that I'm talking to? And this part of the message is frequently forgotten. But this is probably one of the most important parts of the message. As a da'i, somebody who is inviting others to this deen, you have to have that understanding. That humility is very important. Moving on, I'll quickly go through this because like I said, mashallah, you're all quite familiar with this. What do I mean by marketing approach? Well, first, marketing 101. Those of you who are in university would be familiar that most of the courses that you take, the first course you take is 101. In the university, the 1 represents the first year that you're in, and 101 is the first portion, the introduction to that particular course.
Basic things.
The very basic, right? So marketing 101 is what we're talking about. Nothing complicated, nothing beyond what sometimes is even taught in high school, but most of the times is taught in first year university. If you're doing a bachelor's degree in business or commerce, that's what they will teach you in marketing. If you're doing an MBA, this is going to be the first course that they're going to teach you in marketing. So I'm going to give you that in a very, very small nutshell. So all we're talking about is market versus product. What do you understand by what is a market? What is a market? What is a product? You familiar with these terms? Sure you all are, because we live in a community where we're surrounded by the market. You can call it a souk, but market in its most general terms means any group of people, any group of buyers, anybody who's going to buy your product. In your case, your market might be your patients, right? In your case, maybe your market is some client who needs software installed or programming done, or in case you're in hardware, it might mean selling the hardware. That's your market. In your case, your market is your students, right? It could also be your market is your parents.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So depending on, and for you all who are still students and have not thought, maybe you are already doing some business in some way or the other. But we are constantly in a market. Sometimes you've got to market your ideas to your parents. Maybe you want the latest Xbox, you know, or maybe you want to get extra money for something. I don't know, maybe a new football or something like that. Some new outfit that you want to play games, right? You need to market yourself to your parents. You go and convince, you know, please, all the other kids have it, that kind of thing, whatever, however you do it. But the point is, they are your market at that time. What's the product you're selling? In your case, the product you're selling is the services that you have. You know, as medical professionals, you're providing a service. And fortunately for you, and unfortunately for your parents, your patients, that service is going to be always needed, right? But that's a service you're providing. So your product, in our case, now take all these ideas and apply them to Islam and Dawah and all. So in that case, what is our market and what is our product? So first, what is our product? What's the product we're selling? Islam. Now the question is, when you think of your product as Islam, how do you think of it as a product? Tell me.
As a way of life.
Okay. Anything else? Have you ever thought of Islam as a product?
Maybe doesn't expire.
Okay. Because you can think of it as a product or a service. However, the general terms in marketing are always product versus market. So what I want you to do is think for a moment about Islam as a product. If you are somebody whose job is to market this, what would you look for in a product? So for example, if I look at this chair and I want to try to market this chair, I will look at what the features are. And I will try to show my market what is amazing about this chair. What are the unique features about this chair? What is it that makes this chair better than that chair? So the same way you've got to look at the product being Islam, and you've got to think, okay, what is it that makes this a unique product, a special product? So you need to look at the attributes of the product, the features of the product. Fair enough? Yeah. That's how you identify the product. Now what about market? In our case, what would the market be? What would your market be?
Humanity.
This is if you're a doctor, it's patients. About Islam, what would your market be?
Humanity.
All of humanity. Excellent. But now we will go later on and we will look at it from a different angle. How you take your market and you understand it better. So if you're in Saudi Arabia, what town are you in? Ahsa. How big is Ahsa?
Bahrain. Maybe as big as Bahrain.
As big as Bahrain. So we will talk a little bit more about how you look at your market. Ahsa in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as part of the Khalij, the Gulf, as part of the whole world. Inshallah. In order to do that, you need to do some market research and some product research. Because you know your product, yeah. You practice it. You are a Muslim. Right? But when you're dealing with a particular market, if you go, for example, let's say to France, and you are in Lyon, and you want to do da'wah to the non-Muslims there, are you going to do it in Arabic?
No.
You'll do it in French. That's how you know your market. You know that your market is French speaking, so you need to learn French. But now, what about your product? How will you customize your product to reach out to them? You have to think, oh, these are people of the book. Many of them, some of them may have left their deen and become atheists or agnostics. So if you understand your market, you can then look at the features of your product and market those features that are best suited to that market. So this is where you need to do product research as well. You need to know what your product is all about. Not just what you are practicing, but what would be applicable to that market. In order to do this, in order to understand our product and our market, we need to do what many of you might be familiar with, is SWOT analysis. This is typical whenever you're doing any kind of planning, whenever you want to figure out where you are, you do a SWOT or a situational analysis. So let's talk about the product itself. What is so special about this product? What are our strengths? I've put them up there, but you try to tell me, based on that and your own experience, what's so special about Islam?
Well, I think because monotheism and getting away from that paganism, the lower creatures becoming God. I think maybe this is something interesting for people who...
Why?
Because it involves, like, I like some Muslim preachers, they put it to like, they link the proof for God, or the proof for existence for God by the theory of the Big Bang. So that's something scientific, that's something...
that's using reason?
Yeah, that's reasoning. I think by this way, we can grasp some people who are, the people who are admirers of science, the people who are following that.
Now here you're going into methodology. Yeah, what I'm talking about here, what I'm asking here is, why is it a fantastic product? Reason?
Because it's, what's the word? Do you know, humble?
Mystery.
Yeah, it's kind of mystery, because almost in all religions, or most of them, they see what they are worshipping. For example, Buddha or whatever, or even Christianity, they have that cross. But in our case, we're worshipping somebody who we do not see. So that's kind of mystery for them. So it's kind of fantastic.
Could be. That's one way of looking at it. Yes, brother?
It's free for everyone. Like, anyone can join Islam.
Okay, okay. Even more fundamental than that, right, is who has created us? Allah has created us, right? If I put together, let's say, okay, I have a phone here, Samsung, Apple, whatever it is. Okay, I'm the one who's manufactured this phone. Who knows this phone better? I'm the one who knows it best. So Allah has created us. Who knows us best? Allah knows us best. So Allah has created a manual for us. That manual is the Quran. Allah has created a sales force for us to explain the features of this. Those are the prophets that came. They are the ones who showed us how to use that product. So the product is fantastic because it is created by the ultimate creator. I may make a book, I may make a bottle, I may make a chair, but I am not perfect. None of us are. Allah is perfect, and Allah is the one that has created this product for the best of creation. This is what makes this product so fantastic. There are no errors in this product. The product is the only thing that exists that is perfect. Human beings are imperfect. We are imperfect. Everything else around us is imperfect. But this deen that Allah has given us is perfect. There is nothing in this deen that is not perfection, because it is directly from Allah, meant for us. That is what makes this product so fantastic. The other items I've put there are that we have the human resources. We talk about 1.3, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 billion people around the world. We have the financial resources. Some of the wealthiest people in the world are Muslim, right? And I would like you to think along the lines of, what are the other strengths we have? There are many, but above all, help is guaranteed from Allah if we do this work right, with the sincerest of intentions. The weakness that we have, and there are many weaknesses we have. The first is the same large number of people we're talking about, 1.6, 1.7 billion people around the world. We're weak. We're not all good users of this product. We don't use it well. We don't practice it well. We don't bring it totally as part of our lives. And how are we going to go and then invite people to this way of life? We don't use wisdom. We say everything sometimes. We say nothing sometimes. We say the wrong things. In terms of the divisions we have within us, all the different sects we have, how we want to divide. Oh, you believe in this, this is an Aqidah issue, you are not part of this thing, you are different from me, that sort of thing. Then you look at our resources that we have, whether human or financial, how well are we utilizing them? Lastly, ignorance. And this is not a misprint, it's not what is Islam, it is what Islam. Because there are so many versions of Islam that are out there. Right now we have this whole movement going on, political, military movement, Daesh, ISIS and all. What version of Islam is that? The country you come from, there's another version of Islam. You go from your home country and there's another version of Islam. And there's divisions there. One group of people fighting another group of people. You go to different parts of Africa, same thing. You go to America, same thing. You go to Europe, same thing. All parts of the world, we've got so many divisions amongst us. So what Islam are we talking about? Do we have one Islam that we're talking about, or are there many Islams? Islam has to be one only. This is from Allah. The Quran is one. Then how come we have so many groups of people, each one saying they are right and everybody else is wrong? And that's what's so unique about every one of these groups. That every one of these groups sincerely believes that they are the only ones who are right and everybody else is wrong. And unfortunately, many of those groups, I came across a very interesting thing, that a lot of these sects, they call one another kafir, and it is the kafirs out there who call us all Muslim. Think about how interesting that is. We call one another kafir, but it's the outsiders who look at us and group us all as one and call us Muslims. And then we have to say, no, I'm not like that person. I'm like this person. No, I'm not like this. We don't believe in this, we believe in this. And we're constantly defending our position. We're saying, okay, that group is different from us. We are different. So think about this. Because it's a very big weakness that we have. Now what about in terms of the OT part, opportunities and threats? Opportunities, there's a huge vacuum out there. There is, on a daily basis, if you look around and you talk to people that you meet, non-Muslims, many of them have a great need for something in their life. They need purpose. Every human being needs purpose. You get to a point in your life, you're saying, what is this all about? Why am I here? Is it all about just eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, sleeping? Is this what life is all about? Or is there more to it? So there's a huge vacuum, a spiritual vacuum, and there are no answers. Most other faiths don't give an answer that is sufficient. So there's very little competition. There's no real competition out there. So that's a huge opportunity that we have. The second is world events. Whether we like it or not, for whatever reasons it is, but there are constantly events going on around the world. Constantly. So yesterday, what was it? This group of people destroying statues, that are predating Islam, hundreds if not thousands of years old. It becomes a big thing. YouTube links and goes viral all over the world, and the media has picked it up and talking about how these so-called Muslims are destroying humanity, the culture of humanity, the history that we have. And they relate it to Islam, and they relate it to the Prophet ﷺ. So now we have an opportunity. It's a world event. It's a bad event, but still an event where somebody will talk to you. So what do you think about this? These guys are doing these things in the name of your religion. That's a world event, and they're constantly world events every day. The third is we still have the freedom to invite. We still have, in the country that you come from, here in Bahrain, in different parts of the world, there is still freedom to invite people to this way of life. There were times, you look at a couple of hundred years ago, back in the 15th century, the Spanish Inquisition, in parts of Europe, where the Catholic Church took over pretty much, Muslims would not be allowed to practice their faith, leave alone invite people to Islam. They were in a state where they would sometimes not go to sleep at night to just hold their wudu so that they could pray, and they would pray in secret. But that was a couple of centuries ago. Even right now, you go to China, many parts of China, you cannot do da'wah. You go to some of the former Soviet republics, the same thing, right? Sometimes that is clearly there. Sometimes it's very hidden. You go to parts of America, or generally North America, you go to Europe, and doing da'wah is very difficult. But still, alhamdulillah, there is to some extent freedom. What about the threats? These same world events we talked about could be world events that lead to more and more restrictions on us doing this work. If we are seen as a threat, people will shut us down. The more successful you become, the more you become a threat to people who want the world to remain the way it is, who want to continue oppressing people and taking advantage of people. The majority of the world is oppressed. Even if you have the freedom to earn money and everything, the majority of the world is oppressed. Economically, there's very few people that benefit around the world. Very few people. A few weeks ago, a study came out by Forbes that 1% of the world owns more than 90-something% of the world. They own more. You take that, I think it was the top 93 people, the wealthiest people, the top 93 individuals, and they own more than half the world's wealth. More than half the world's wealth is owned by such few people. Think about it for a moment, how scary that is. Now those people, do you think they want to let go? So what do you tell a child in Africa who's starving? Too bad, you die. Allah is guaranteed that He's going to give us rizq, all of us. So how come there are people dying in Africa, in Asia, in South America? From starvation, from lack of food. Why? Because others have a lot more. If 93 people, less than 100 people can own half the world's wealth, what a world we live in. What a horrible world we live in. So these are all, issues that are slowly closing, and they are big threats. The other one is what is called Islamophobia. You might have come across this. There's a growing anti-Islamic trend out there. When I said earlier, over 1,000 articles and magazines and video clips and everything on a daily basis, that's a small number. It's growing, it's becoming bigger and bigger. And this is what I mean by Islamophobia, attacks against Islam. And they will attack the most fundamental things that we hold dear to us. So they will attack the Prophet ﷺ. They will attack the Quran. They will attack the values that we stand on. And they will attack in every way they can. Now this is not something new. The shaitan has promised, Iblis has promised from the beginning that he's going to lead humanity astray. So it's not that it's any different. It's just that now with the way the world is and how we are connected with one another and how easy it is, something that I'm saying right now, you can record it right now, and within a few seconds, everybody in the world can know about what I'm saying. That's a scary amount of power that each individual holds. And yet at the same time, the bulk of it is used against Islam. So this is what's going on. And the other one is all these isms that are there. Terrorism, extremism, nationalism. These are ways in which we are divided constantly. Constantly divided and all, and kept away from what the purpose of our life is. Moving on. What I call the STPs. Again, we're talking about marketing. So we take a market, any market. So let's say, for example, I'm not very familiar with your market. You tell me, how big is your city? Ahsa, how big is it?
It's quite large, like as
big as Bahrain, right? Can you, as a group of 10, 12, 15 people, can you reach out to everybody there?
No.
Can you deliver the message to everybody? You'll need to segment it. You'd need to break it down. So think of it like a big pizza pie. Think of it as a big pizza. You ordered a big pizza. Amongst all of us, let's say we ordered the biggest pizza we could find. It's like a 25-inch pizza, right? Big, like about a meter wide. Huge big pizza, right? And you said, okay, I'm going to eat this pizza. Are you going to take the whole thing and stuff it in your mouth? Maybe some of you can. I don't know. Maybe tough, right? What you need to do is cut it. Break it into smaller pieces. So you will segment it. You will divide it into smaller portions, something that you can take into your mouth. That's what is meant by segment, divide the market. Then you will target yourself into that particular segment. So once you've divided the pizza into different slices, now you're going to say, okay, that is my slice. I'm going to go for that slice. Nobody else go for that slice. That's my slice. I'm going for it. So you're now targeting that particular slice that you've gone for. So that market you have, you've targeted that market. Now you're going to position yourself to eat. You're going to grab the pizza, put it to your mouth, and take it in. So the same applies to the market where you need to position yourself in that market. How are you going to reach into that market? That segment that you've targeted, now you're going to position yourself in that. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit about the different ways. Direct versus indirect da'wah. Okay. Direct da'wah, you're like salespeople. I'm sure you're very familiar with this. You know, you go to a store and somebody is trying to sell you something. You go to a mobile store and the person behind the counter there, he's telling you, no, this phone is better. He's trying to get you to buy the most expensive phone he can. So he's a salesperson there. So you are da'is, you're a sales force. When you meet somebody, either in your school, in your university, in the market, wherever you are that salesperson delivering that message of Islam. You're selling that product. So it's either one-on-one or you're dealing with a large group of people. Maybe you're talking to several people at the same time. It could be at different events that you organize as a group of people. And then you have indirect, where you use some kind of medium to deliver the message. So it may be books that you use, it may be a pamphlet, it may be a website, it may be WhatsApp messages, maybe Twitter, Instagram. These are all different kinds of media that you use to deliver the message of Islam. They could be of two kinds. One is where you get it for free, so you're not paying for it. The other one is that you have to pay for it. For example, you take a newspaper, place an ad in it, you've got to pay for that ad to place there. So these are different ways in which you may be doing da'wah, again looking at it from a marketing standpoint. And this pretty much, in a very small way, in a very quick way, marketing 101 is what a marketing approach to da'wah is all about. So before we go on, any questions? Told you it's going to be very easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean it's...
Okay, alhamdulillah. Yes, brother.
Can you repeat the STP?
Yeah, segment, target, and position. Segment is take that big pizza pie, break it into smaller portions so that you can eat it. Target is where you go for that one particular portion that you want, and then position yourself how best to attack that particular market. Yes, brother.
As we are salesmen,
yes,
we should always be thoughtful about our products, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Unlike any other product that we're doing out there, in this particular case, there's no question about the truthfulness of what we're doing.
We should always be truthful, right?
Yes, I mean, think about it for a moment. The product you're selling in of itself is truth, right? If I tell people that you should always be honest, and I'm not honest about it, there's a problem there, right? Okay. The third session, so we've already covered the first two sessions in your program, if you look at it. The third session we have is understanding the market. And in this particular part of the workshop is where you will do the work and I will watch you. So I want you to analyze, and I'll give you some markers, hopefully they work, and a whiteboard there. And I would like one of you to take charge of this. Yes, brother.
Yeah, I visit my friend to be in charge.
Okay, the markers work fine. Okay, why don't we do this? I'm going to ask you questions and you'll fill in the gaps, okay? So, this part of the workshop is very easy. It's going to maybe take another 10 minutes and then we'll take a break for coffee and all that. So, in these 10 minutes, I want to know everything I can about your market. Fair enough?
Yeah.
So, first, what is your market? Tell me. Okay.
A tourist.
Okay, so let's put this down. Humanity. Somebody else says tourists. Okay.
general or just an hour tour in the mosque?
Okay, it all depends how you want to do it. You see, we talked about your pizza pie. So what are you going to define your pizza as being? That's up to you, how you define your pizza. Right? It is entirely up to you how you define it. So, you need to tell me what you're going to start with as your definition of your pizza. And maybe you want to direct the camera this way. So, what's that pizza going to be? Is it going to be the mosque?
Maybe co-workers.
As a group, I would imagine that you're working together as a group, or you've come here as a group. So tell me, what is your market? Can we say your city?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you spell it? A-H-S-A?
Yes.
Is it Al-Ahsa or Ahsa?
Al-Ahsa.
No problem. It's all correct.
Okay. So this is the name of your city. So this is a city? Tell me more about this city. How many people live here?
Million. About a million.
No, 2 million.
2 million.
So is it 1 million or 2 million?
2 million.
Which one of you is right?
2 million.
Can anybody else give me another number? We're holding an auction here.
They just love their city, so they want to make it a big deal. Just a million.
Okay, you're saying it's 1 million, you're saying it's 2 million.
Because I've read it.
Make it 1,050,000.
Let's just say approximately, because the city is still growing.
Okay, so we can say it's between 1 million to 2 million people, roughly. Maybe 1.5 million, right? Okay. Now, does that tell you something already about your city? About how much you know about your own city?
Yeah, we know really not much.
Aha! You see, because you have disagreement here as to whether it's 1 million or 2 million people, back to what we said earlier, market research. You need to know your market. And apparently, you don't know your market. I mean, this is your city. You live in this city. Some of you have been born in this city, maybe, right? Okay, how well do you know your city? How many people live in this city? Right? You need to know what your market is all about. So the first thing we start with is how many people? Because we're dealing with people. We're reaching out to people. So when we talked about the pizza being, 25 inches, we need to know how big is that pizza in the first place. We want to feed all of us here. I say, okay, well, let's call Papa John's and order pizzas. So how many pizzas are we going to order? We need to know how many to order. If I don't know how many people are here, how am I going to order how many pizzas, right? So we need to know how big that pizza is. So 1 to 2 million people. Now, who are these people? How many men? How many women? Okay, do you know?
Almost half, because the Saudi Arabia population is 51% men and 49 women.
So 51% versus 49%. So some of the brothers are not going to get wives, right? Okay, so the population is roughly half men, half women. Okay, what about age?
We mostly youngsters.
Yeah, the majority are youth.
Majority are youth. So how would you define youth? Under the age of 20?
Yeah,
No,
above the age
no.
of 20 until 30.
Margin of 15.
So if you were to graph it, number of people here and age here, right? Would you get a curve like this, or would you get a curve like that? What kind of curve would you get? So that you say the majority of people here are between 20 and 30. Or is it the majority of people here between 40 and 50?
I think from 13 to 38.
Okay, so you see why is this important? Why is this important?
Because you know who you are dealing with.
And what technique we use.
Okay, why?
Because, for example, you cannot use something that usually used with kids to invite old people.
Exactly. Now we're talking about segmenting, targeting, and position yourself. We're talking about positioning. How you position yourself. Because the way you will talk to sisters about Islam is very different than what you'll talk to brothers. Not everything, but some things will be different. The way you may talk to a 17-year-old about Islam may be very different than what you talk to a 70-year-old about Islam. Your approach will change depending on which market you're reaching out to. But you need to know what your market is. Yes, brother?
Excuse me, but maybe, I mean, the whole 2 million are not our market, because like most of them are Muslims. They are already Muslims.
Okay, so now you're asking very, very important questions, which we should get into. So, okay, we know about gender, we know about age. What else do we need to know about this market? Very important question. What?
Muslims and non-Muslims.
Yes, exactly. So now you've identified Muslim versus non-Muslim. Maybe this was the first question to ask, right? Because if we're doing da'wah and we are inviting people to Islam, yeah, a lot of Muslims also need that invitation. But generally we would say that our market is the non-Muslim market, those who are not Muslim. I'd like to call people of other faiths. That's a better way of saying it as opposed to none, but that's fine. You can say non-Muslim, right? People who are not Muslim. That's the market we're reaching out to. So we need to figure out what is that population. So out of the 1 million people, let's make our numbers simple and say it's 1 million. Just for today's argument. It may be more, 1.5, 1.8, whatever it is, but let's say it's 1 million. Out of the 1 million people, how many are non-Muslims?
Maybe 90% Muslim.
90% are Muslim.
I think it's more than that, maybe 95.
95% Muslim.
98%.
So 98% Muslim. Slowly we're going to get to a point where we don't even have a market. So we're saying right now, this is the entire population, which is, let's say, 1 million people. We're saying right now a population that we're reaching out to. That's our tiny little slice that we want to reach out to. So that's what, maybe 50,000 people? Fair enough?
Yeah. Less than that, I think, anyway.
Okay. What number? Give me a number. 30,000 people?
Yes.
Wow. We're making your job much easier, aren't we? 20,000? Maybe 10,000?
No, I think it's 20.
Okay.
2010.
So, now, you have only 20,000 people to reach you. You know, you guys, by the end of this year, all these people should know about Islam. You have absolutely no reason that these 20,000 should not know about Islam. So maybe you can even set a goal right now, that your goal is by the end of 2015, or let's make it easier, by the end of 2016, every single non-Muslim in that city should know about Islam. There's no reason why not. That's a very, very small number.
How we reach them?
That's what we're going to get to in a short while. But first you need to know who they are, right?
But these 20,000 are not fixed. Some of them will leave, some of them will come.
Okay, so it is a transient population, it comes and goes. Okay, fine, but still roughly about 20,000. Now of these 20,000, who are they? Do you know more about them? Are they men, women?
Workers, women, yeah.
Okay, mostly men. So you could say maybe 95% men?
98%.
98% men?
I think, how about the housemaid?
Okay, so maybe it's less. Maybe it's 90% men. Okay, so let's say 90% men, and let's say 10%. For our sake right now, for this discussion, we'll say 90% men, 10% women. Now, of these 90% men, what languages do they speak? Surely many of them do speak a little bit of Arabic.
English.
English. The majority is English.
Yeah.
Okay, good. How many?
Indian?
So, 18,000 men, out of the 18,000 men, how many actually speak fluent English?
Maybe
Not few.
not fluent, but
20,
they speak English.
20%.
So you need to know what language do they speak, because that's how you're going to communicate with them. You need to know what age group they are, so you know how to talk to them. You need to know what education level they are at. So if you have an idea of their education, you can talk to them at that level. Education. What else? Can you tell me other things that you need to know about them?
Social state.
Social status. Okay, what else?
Background.
Background meaning what?
Culture.
Religious.
Religion. Okay, very, very important. How come we forgot that? Yeah. What is their religion? Why is that important?
Because there are Christians. I think it's easy. There is a kind of just relationship and
Right. So
comparison between.
religion, very important. We need to know what religion they are, or even if they have a religion or not. It's very, very important. Let's say you meet a Christian and you start saying, you know, I know a lot about Mary, the mother of Jesus and all. I should talk to him about how the Quran says that Mary was a virgin, that no man had touched her, that the angels approached her, and the entire, in Surah Maryam, how it is related and all. I should talk to this person because the person will be so impressed about Islam, right?
Yeah.
Do you think you should do that with every Christian?
No.
Why not?
Because not every Christian is a real
Their
Christian.
denomination.
Okay, what else?
Denomination and their thinking.
So how is it different? So you need to know, why do you need to know which denomination? Let's take the issue of Mary, the mother of Jesus alayhi salam. Right?
Catholic is different than he's a Protestant.
Okay, what is the difference between the two?
Well, Catholic.
Let's say regarding Mary, the mother of Jesus alayhi
Yes,
salam.
for Mary, for example, the Catholic, she's almost a god, almost.
Okay,
But like other types, maybe she's not that high, so maybe we
Okay.
can focus on other things.
right. In addition to that, many Protestants do not believe in the virgin birth. They don't believe in that miracle. Whereas many Catholics not only believe in the virgin birth, but they also believe that Mary herself,
It's a God.
not just a god or a goddess, but that her birth was also miraculous. Not just the birth of Jesus. They believe in the Annunciation of Mary, which is another term altogether, and it comes before that. So that's also part of it. So if you're dealing with a Catholic, it's a very different conversation you'll have than if you're dealing with a Protestant. Now, if you did not know that the person is Christian and all, and you want to go and talk to them about Mary, the mother of Jesus, and it turns out the person is Buddhist or a Hindu, they don't care.
Right.
Why are you talking to them about that? So it's very important that we know the religion. What else is important that we need to know about these people that we're reaching out to? Language, age, gender, religion, all these things, education. Anything else you think? And there are many other ways. So I don't need you to answer that right now because we're trying to move a little faster. But I want you to think about it. That your market, you need to understand your market. And when you look at your city, which you live in, and some of you may have been born there, how well do you know your city? How well do you know your market? You need to fully define your market as best as you can. Because when you understand the people that you're reaching out to, only then will you be able to effectively deliver the product as they want it. And we'll talk more after the break about the market, the product, and how you deliver that message. That's going to be the next part. So we'll take a break right now. Inshallah, this second part of the session, we will start first with understanding what our product is. We talked a little bit about the market. Now we'll talk more about the product. And then finally, we'll close off with what I call the art of Dawah. So we've been talking about the science, the marketing part of it, the science part of it, but there's also an art part of it. So when we talk about a marketing approach to Dawah, there's two parts to it, the art of Dawah, the science of Dawah, and the art of Dawah. And so we'll end off with that, and then we can have any questions you have and all. Inshallah, within an hour, we should be done. I don't want to take it too long. But in order for us to continue, I'd like to surprise you with something. You have a quiz.
We didn't prepare.
That's the idea. You are students, so you're familiar with quizzes, I'm sure. So this is a what I would call a pop quiz. You did not know about it, and that's what makes it even more interesting. So I have a quiz for all of you. Please take a few minutes. Inshallah, it shouldn't take very, very long. Okay, let's start. Was that fun?
Well,
No? Not fun? Quiz is always fun.
they are doing the thing.
Quizzes all love quizzes.
Quizzes that have no marks.
No marks. Well, you're going to mark it yourself, so at the end of it, you can give yourself 100%. Fair enough? Okay, let's start with the first one. True or false? all Christians believe that Jesus alayhi salam is the Son of God?
False.
Okay. Which ones don't believe that he's the Son of God? Do you know?
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Almost Unitarian.
Okay. Good word you used there, Unitarian. There's an entire group of Christians called Unitarians. And Unitarians believe in one God. They do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. There are also groups of people who are very closely related to their Christian groups, but they call themselves Jewish. And they call it themselves Messianic Jews, because they believed in Jesus being the Messiah, Masih. So they are very close to Islam, extremely close to Islam. So there are many groups like this. Amongst the Christian denominations, there are many denominations, and there are quite a few denominations that do not believe that Isa alayhi salam was anything but a messenger.
Ariosians.
Yeah.
The Ariosians, the one who called Arius. He was the Unitarian one who was chased to death after he declared it.
Right. Yes. Okay. Next question. Most Jews believe in one God. True or false?
I think true.
I guess.
The Jewish community is divided into different groups, different sects, and amongst them they have those who do not believe in God at all. There's a good number and a growing number that do not believe in God.
Atheists.
They're atheists, completely atheists. There's another group that is more agnostic. They understand that there is God and all, but not in the organized fashion. The majority of them, however, still believe in one God. Okay, next question. Hindus believe in... I'm sorry? The answer here is most Jews, so yes, it is true. But that answer is changing as time goes by. If the trends continue the way they are, maybe in 15, 20 years, we'll have to say some Jews believe in one God, not most. Because the growing trend amongst the Jewish community is more and more of the younger generation does not believe in God. That is the growing trend. So if you look up Judaism and you look up the different denominations that are there, you will see that they are divided into 5 different groups, and the 2 most liberal groups are the ones that are heading more and more towards not believing in God, and they are becoming bigger and bigger. So as time goes by, the newer generation that's coming along, they don't believe. They think of Judaism as a culture. It's like, okay, I'm Jewish and I have certain, cultural practices, but I don't really believe in all this stuff. Yes, brother?
So for now we could say it's true that all of them believe in one.
Not all. The question is most. So it is true that most Jews presently believe in one God. But that figure is changing as each day goes by. So possibly in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we may have to change that question and say not most Jews, but some Jews. So this is interesting, the changes that are taking place. Next is Hindus believe in one God, many gods, the Trinity, one God manifested in many.
Many gods.
Okay, who thinks it's one God? Anybody? Many gods? Think many gods? Who says many gods? Some of you? Okay. Trinity. You're familiar with Trinity?
Yes.
Okay. One God manifested in many.
Yeah.
Who feels that's the right answer? Okay. That's probably the most accurate answer from all of them. If you ask any Hindu, how many gods are there? They'll say one. You will rarely come across a Hindu that will say they don't believe in one God. Almost all of them believe in one God. If they know their religion, they believe in one God. But they say that God is in everything. Everything is God. It's one God, but God is everywhere. If God is everywhere, that means this piece of paper, I can worship it, and this is my God. I can put it on a table and go and bow down to it. That's their understanding. So it's one God manifested in many. It's a concept that in other words you can call it's pantheism. There's atheism, not believe in God, monotheism, which is one God, tritheism, which is 3 gods, or pantheism. Pan means everything. So God is everywhere, God is everything.
Pan, P-A-N.
P-A-N, pantheism. Who wrote the Bible? God, Gabriel, many people, prophets, and revelation from God.
Many people, prophets,
Many people.
You think God wrote the Bible? Okay, what about you?
It's many people.
Okay, the Bible as it stands today. We're not talking about the Injil or the Torah or the Zabur. We're talking the Bible as it stands today. And you can see there are different versions of the Bible. There's the King James Version, there's the Revised Standard Version, there's the Catholic Bible, and each one of them is different. Some, but they're different by the number of books they have. 66 books, 73 books, you know. So the size of the Bible even keeps changing, leave alone the details. Which should tell you that it can't be, all of it cannot be from God. All of it cannot be from Allah. So all of it is not wahi, all of it is not revelation. All of it did not come down to Musa alayhi salam or Isa alayhi salam or Dawood alayhi salam. But it's a combination. It's a combination of hadith from the time of the prophets, from the hadith of Isa alayhi salam or the hadith of Musa alayhi salam. It is the stories of people. It is the stories, changed over time. You know, you get a group of people coming together and discussing amongst themselves, no, we should change this to this. So it's all of the above. It is many people, prophets, and revelation of God, from God. Because you will see there is some truths in there. You know, there are places in the Bible that you can identify. Of course, we cannot be sure 100%. And if you take the Bible in its existing form in a different language, then it's no longer revelation from God. It's a translation. Just the way if you take the Quran, if the Quran is not in Arabic and it is in a different language, then that is not revelation itself. It is now a work of man. It is human beings that have taken the original Arabic and translated into a different language. That translated version is not the Quran, it is a translation of the Quran. So the same way, the Bible also today, we do not have the original Bible, or we do not have the original Zabur, or the Injil, or the Torah. It's portions of it that are there, and that even they've been translated and translated and translated from one language to another. And there's a lot more else in there. Okay. Most Jews think that Jesus is a prophet, a son of God, the Messiah, a heretic, an ordinary man. Okay, that might have been a difficult word. You might have been searching for what that word means. Heresy means going away, doing things that are different from the normal. So being something that is totally against what society is, you become a heretic. So in this case, the correct answer would be heretic. There are some Jews that think he was a great man, and there are some Jews who do believe that he is the Messiah. Those are the Messianic Jews. But they become Christians if they believe that way, or they're treated as Christians. Unitarian Universalists believe in Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of the above. Okay. Any other answers?
In terms of Unitarian, have only Islam.
Okay. There's two words there, Unitarian and Universalists.
I think we should think about Judaism and Islam, but as far as I know, Judaism are not universalistic, because they think they are the only worshippers, and the rest are,
Yes, okay. So, what do you think is the right answer there? Unitarian Universalists believe in?
I think it's the closest to Islam, for my opinion.
Okay, well, what other opinions are there? Christianity, okay. Did any one of you think of the answer of all of the above? Okay, you're right. Whoever said all of the above is right. Unitarian, Universal. Unitarian means they believe in one God. Universalist means they believe in all the different religions. So what makes them unique, and that's why I put that up there, is that I remember once being invited to a church, a Unitarian Universalist church in Orlando, Florida. And I walk into the church. I was asked to be their priest for Sunday. Every Sunday they have church service. They ask me to be their pastor for that Sunday. So I walk into the church, and on the walls I saw a cross, I saw a Star of David, I saw a crescent, I saw the Om sign, I saw the sign that the Jains use, I saw the sign that the Sikhs use, And underneath that there were books. There was a copy of the Old Testament. There was a copy of the New Testament, the collected version. There was a Catholic Bible, a Protestant Bible, different versions of Bibles. There was the Mahabharata. There was a book from the Baha'i faith, and there was a Quran there as well. So they had all the different books there. And on the walls they had symbols from all the different religions. And when they asked me to be their priest, they actually addressed me as pastor. Said, Pastor Muhammad. So when I talked to them, they were so happy to hear everything I said. And I was talking to them about Islam. At the end of it, they were crying and they wanted to hold me and hug me and, take me in as their own. Because to them, they believe in all this. But they also believe in Hinduism. They also believe in Christianity. They also believe in Jesus dying for their sins. They believe in everything. They say all different paths lead to the truth. That's their understanding. Very difficult to deal with such people. Because when you're doing da'wah to them, how do you do da'wah to them? They say, yeah, I believe you. Say, you believe in Muhammad being the final prophet? Yes, we believe. But you also believe that Jesus died for your sins? Yes, we do. There's a problem there. We have a problem with that. But to them, it's okay. All of it is okay. You can believe whatever you want. You be a good person, Allah will accept you. So it's interesting. Which one of the following is not a Christian denomination? Lutheran, Episcopalian, Methodist, Taoist, all of the above are Christian.
Taoist, I think.
Methodist, okay. Taoist, anybody else? Okay, Methodist is a Christian denomination. Taoist is not. Taoist comes from Japan, from the East. Okay, moving on, and we'll be a little faster. Some I will explain, some I will just move on. True or false? Most Christians believe that Satan, Shaitan, is a fallen angel. True? False? Who thinks it's true? The answer is yes, it is. That's what most Christians believe.
True.
True. That Shaitan was the leader of the angels, and that he is a fallen angel, meaning he went against God. He went against Allah, and so he's a fallen angel. What do we believe?
We believe like them.
No. Do we believe like them that he was a malaika?
No.
He was one of the jinn. Not. Yeah.
Some explanations that he could be one of the malaika.
Yes, that's what I.
So the opinion of some of the scholars, but the dominant opinion says.
The dominant opinion says that he was.
He was
One of the jinns?
Yes.
And then, but he was pious in the first place.
Yeah, pious is fine. But the definition, if you go by strict definition, I don't think there is a difference of opinion there. Because he clearly, in the Quran it says, I'm made of fire, he is made of, we know that the angels are not made from fire.
Yeah.
So from that strict definition, he could have been the head of the angels, but not an angel himself. Fair enough?
Fair.
Moving on. True or false? All Christians believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. I kind of gave you the answer earlier, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah. So, false. True or false? All Jews hate Muslims. Of course, can't just say an entire group of people hates another group of people, right? All Jews are Zionists. Now, the reason these are important questions, even though the answer is very easy, is because I've come across people, our own Muslim brothers and sisters, who very firmly believe that all Jews hate us and all Jews are Zionists. And the sad part of this is that when you're judging other people, remember the first verse of the Quran I put earlier? That only Allah knows those who are astray and those who are guided. Mm-hmm. You see, when we make a judgment about the people that we're reaching out to, we already decided this person is, he's gone, finished. Right?
What do you mean by Zionist?
Okay, Zionism is a political movement with the idea that all Jews should come back to Israel, and that the purpose of the Jewish community around the world is to create the state of Israel and to recreate the kingdom that was originally created by Dawud alayhi salam. And that kingdom will be the kingdom where the Messiah will come, because they don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They believe the Messiah is still to come. and that they will get rulership, dominion over the earth, that they are the chosen people. So they have, it's a political movement. There are a lot of different versions to it. The religious version is this. But what I suggest you do is look it up so that you know what the political version of it, what it really means from our standpoint, because how it has an impact on us as Muslims. True or false, there are more than 1,000 different kinds of Christian churches. Probably true. I know there's the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that says that Christians will be divided into 72 sects and that we will be divided into 73. But if you look at the actual number of churches, the different kinds of churches, there are thousands. And where I spent most of the last 30 years of my life, I could go in America and go and found a church. I can register a church in my name and call it the Church of Muhammad if I want, and I'll be accepted as a church.
Different belief.
It could be any belief, it doesn't make a difference. They will accept you. That's part of their way of thinking. That's why they have so many divisions. And yes, they do fight amongst one another, and they've had horrific fights in the past. The Spanish Inquisition, even up until now, they're fighting with each other in different parts of the world. But there's nothing stopping you from making it if you want to. And it will be accepted by the rest of you. Because there are churches, for example, that believe in, they worship shaitan. There are churches that believe in black magic, sihr of different kinds. They believe in witches and all that. It's called Wiccan religion. And their churches, they officially recognize this church as a part of the larger Christian faith. Moving on. Catholic priests cannot marry. Yes, very true. That's part of their belief system, that they cannot marry. Women cannot become Christian ministers or Christian pastors or Christian imams. Is that true? Not true. Not all. There are many denominations where women can become priests and pastors. So it's amongst the Catholics it's true, but there are many other denominations where it's not true. 1 out of 6 people on the planet is Hindu. True? Anybody thinks false?
I think it's false.
False. Well, do a rough calculation. There are about 1 billion people in India, the majority of whom there's about 150 million Muslim, maybe 15-20 million Christian, another 20-30 million that are Zoroastrian, called Parsi. The rest of them are Hindu. Makes it almost 1 billion people in India who are Hindu. That in of itself, 7-something billion people, 1 billion in India, and then you've got some in Indonesia, in China, in Japan, all over the Asian countries and in other parts of the world. You come up with a figure like 1.3, 1.4, which roughly is 1 out of 6 people. So 1 out of 6 people, yes, is Hindu around the world. Okay, most Christians believe that all humans are born in sin, the original sin.
Yes, true. I think so.
Okay, it is true. I said most, not all. If I'd said all Christians, then it would be false. But most Christians do believe that we are born in sin. And that is why they need Jesus to die for their sins, because they believe you cannot be cleansed of that sin. Whereas we believe that everybody is born innocent, that they're all born Muslim, with the fitrah of being Muslim. And it is only later that they become Christian, Jew, or any other religion.
What's the other part of the Christian thing?
Many of them are more towards the end where Jesus did not have to die for their sins. Jesus was a prophet. There are some who believe that Jesus was a great man. So it all depends on which denomination there are. There are some who believe, the majority they believe in the original sin, but there's a good number of Christians that do not believe in original sin.
And they do not believe about crucifixion?
They don't believe in the crucifixion. So if you go back again, when we talked earlier, like for example, Messianic Jews, they do not believe that Jesus died for their sins. And there are others that think that Jesus' story is all just a nice story in the Bible, that you're not supposed to take it literally. It's symbolic. It doesn't really mean that he died on the cross and things like that. So it all depends with denomination. The Catholic Bible is different from the Protestant Bible. True? I think I gave you that answer earlier as well, right? Anyway, moving on. Orthodox Jews don't eat pork.
Yeah.
I know that there is a group in Jews that they don't eat pork and they're as much as Muslims. So I'm not sure if they are Orthodox or not.
The answer is yes and yes. There is a group, and that is the Orthodox Jews. These are the most, they are the most strictest of the Jewish community. And like I said before, the Jews are divided into 5 different groups. They are the strictest group. They are the ones that you see the photographs of. You know, the men have the black hat and the hair that comes down like this, and they wear black coats and all, and they have beards. Yeah, that's the Orthodox Jews. They are very strict about food. And in fact, they are far more strict than we are. And you go back to the Quran, and you go to Surah Baqarah and all, and you'll come across verses there that show that Allah made these rules for them even more strict. And then there are places in the Quran that tells us that Allah eased those rules for us. And the rules are made more strict for them because of who they were and how they behaved. But that wasn't the only reason. There's also a scientific explanation behind it. You see, as humanity progressed and we got better and better ways of preserving food and preventing disease and cleanliness, the rules became more loose. That's why the rules of halal are not as strict as the rules of kosher. Kosher rules, for example, they cannot mix milk and meat together. They cannot cook it in the same pot. So if you took a pot and you use that pot to cook milk or anything, any cheese or anything like that, you can't use that pot for meat. Now that is a rule from Allah that was given to them. It's more strict than our rules. But think about it scientifically. Why was that rule given to them? Cross-contamination. You're familiar with these things as medical professionals, right? You don't want cross-contamination. You don't want infectious disease to spread from one to the other. One has a higher chance of bacteria that will go into the other because they did not have the technology at that time to preserve those foods. So that's why it was kept separate. So there was a good reason for it. So today also, kosher rules, many of them do apply. Some of the rules they apply, they're very, very strict. Like for example, the food cannot be cooked on a Saturday because they abide by the rules of Sabbath on the day Yom Sabt. They cannot cook or do any work on Saturday. So if the food is prepared on Saturday, the cow is cut on Saturday, they cannot eat it. That's not kosher anymore. Or if a non-Jew made that food, they cannot touch it. You know, things like that. So they have very, very strict rules. And part of those rules is a punishment on them. Because of their misbehavior, Allah punished them. Because they kept on asking for more rules, they were given more rules. You see? Now, moving on. Most Christians believe that Eve, Hawa, was the cause of Adam's downfall.
I think yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Anybody think otherwise? They not only believe in the original sin, but they also believe, and that original sin is tied to eating of the apple. They call it the apple. We don't think it was the apple. We don't know what fruit it was, but eating of that tree. But they believe that the woman was the cause of that. That the woman is the one that tempted the man. Our understanding is both of them sinned. And both of them were given away by Allah, that these are the words that you should recite to ask for Allah's forgiveness, and both were forgiven. So it wasn't that one gender is responsible. They tie that into original sin, and then they tie it into the pain that a woman goes through every month. And they tie it into childbirth and the pain that a woman goes through childbirth. That this is punishment for her tempting the man with the apple. So this is interesting for us to know, just a little bit background, right?
Sorry, Doctor, don't they believe that Satan tempted Adam to eat from that tree?
They believe that Satan tempted Eve, Hawa, who then in turn went to Adam. It wasn't directly Shaitan too.
Directly to Adam.
No, they believe it was the woman first, Hawa, who was tempted, and she's the one who got tempted, and then she's the one who went to Adam and convinced him.
Are those people who are going to believe about the crucifixion?
Yes.
And so, if they believe about the crucifixion, how is it possible that they think that all our sins are forgiven, right?
Yes.
After the crucifixion.
Yeah.
So how is it possible that all the women are going to suffer, and from the sins that Eve already done by the birth and every month,
Right.
she is suffering. So how is it possible?
That's the dilemma, right? Because on one hand you say, and then you can ask also the question, then what about poverty? What about people suffering in other ways? What about disease?
Yes.
What about illness? What about death? But somebody died for your sins already, according to them. So that is a dilemma. And they have, when you talk to them, when you talk to their priests, they have answers for all these questions. They do have answers for them. But this is not the time or place to discuss that, but khair, maybe later. The Bible permits war.
The Old Testament.
Both the old and the new. There are places even the new. But yes, the Bible does permit war. What was the language that Jesus ﷺ spoke? Isa ﷺ? Aramaic. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Moving on. Baha'ism is an offshoot of
This is
Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism.
if it is the Al-Baha'iyya, which is maybe an Islamic, movement.
Okay.
Baha'iyya is a sect, yeah.
Okay, what do you think? Baha'ism, offshoot of? It's actually an offshoot of Islam. It's not Muslim. They're not Muslim anymore. But they came out of Islam. There were Muslims who got misguided and deviated. And they totally deviated because they believed in a new prophet. They believed in two prophets, the Bab and Baha'u'llah.
Like other Muslim denominations.
Yeah, so they actually went out of Islam completely because they do not believe in Muhammad ﷺ being the final messenger. They believe that two other messengers came after. They are similar to the Ahmadiyya movement. Baha'i movement started in Iran or Persia. The Ahmadiyya movement started in India. And there was a third movement at that time. All three movements were around the same time. This was about 100 years ago or so. All three movements were in British colonies, one in India, one in Persia, and one in North Africa called the Mahdist movement. All three were political movements. All three talked about the coming of a new prophet.
Which one is in the North Africa?
Mahdist.
Mahdist, yeah.
Yeah. All three in the Sudan. All three were political movements and all three were creation of the British colonial powers. They are the ones who created these movements to create a division amongst the Muslims. And that division was the Ahmadiyya movement in India, the Baha'i movement in Persia, modern day Iran, and the Mahdist movement in the Sudan. The Mahdist movement died out. It did not pick up and it did not become a religion. But the other two actually became religions. And today you have millions of Baha'is and you have millions of Ahmadiyya. And many times people confuse Ahmadiyya with Muslims because they call themselves Islam. They don't distinguish themselves. They don't say Ahmadiyya. They say Islam. Khair, moving on. Unitarians believe in Jesus, the Son of God, three gods in one God, Mary as the mother of God. Okay, again, kind of gave you the answer earlier. True or false? Buddhists do not believe in God.
Buddhist, but Buddha, different army.
I think it's true because they believe in Buddha himself.
Okay.
The people believe in God, but the Buddha.
Okay. By definition, Buddhism means not believing in God. By definition, Buddhists don't believe in God. Yes, brother.
So is it true or false?
In this case, Buddhists do not believe in God. True.
True. So what do they actually worship?
They have, it's not specifically worshipping a particular, like they don't actually worship God. They don't believe Buddha was God. But they believe he was enlightened, that he taught them a better way of life. So even when they go and worship him, it's not like they're worshiping God because they don't have the concept of God. But now, what is the purpose of this entire exercise? You see, the next session that we were going to do is the session of understanding the product. What is Islam? Yes.
the big difference between them and the atheists?
That they do believe, they do have a set of principles that talk about creation, birth, rebirth, that you're going to come back, that life is cyclical. So they have a concept.
No superpower.
No, that's the difference. We talked before this session, before the break, we talked about the market. This session was going to be about the product. Yes, brother.
So I believe our benefit from this quiz you gave us is studying more about the market.
Aha! You gave the answer. That's exactly what I was going to say. So, that we need to know our market very well. So this group of people that you're going to reach out to, the 20,000 people, you need to know who they are. So if they have different faiths, different religions, remember religion, very important. You need to know what those religions are. At least have a little bit of an idea. But it also dealt, if you looked at the questions we had, some of them dealt with Islam as well. So this was a quiz which tied in the product and the market together. But it should highlight to you that there are many things we don't know. And there's a lot of research and knowledge that you've got to gather so as to be able to do your job better. I'm going to pass out this list of words. And this is part of this next session, or the quiz was, and so is this. Here. Remember earlier on I said you need to know your product, and when I said Islam, I said what Islam? I did not say what is Islam. And I said there are many different versions of Islam. Similarly, there are many versions to some of these words. Now many of these words you're wondering, what does the Kyoto Treaty have to do with Islam? Or who is the Ku Klux Klan? Or, I don't know,
Malcolm X.
Apocalypse, Americans with Disability. I mean, the first place this particular set of words was put together for an American market. But it's intentional that I'm sharing this with you and not for your market, because you need to go and put your own words together. I've given you a whole list of words that are meant for a different market. The reason I've given you a list of words from a different market is because I don't want to work for you. You need to know your own market. Right? So you need to go and figure out what your list of words should be. Why do you need a list like this? Why do you need a list of words like this?
To know our market.
Know your market, but also to know your...
Speak the language of the market.
Not just that.
Know their religion and beliefs.
Know the religion. What else? Many of these are product related as well. What a list like this does for you is brings or highlights all the issues that are relevant. So for example, if you are in your own community in Al-Aqsa and you come across workers from India, from South India, they're Malayalam, you not only know their language, but you should know what is important for them. So maybe they're Hindu, so you need to define Hinduism. So the word Hinduism is important. You need to know what it means. Because in order to speak their language, you need to know not just the language they speak, but also what they understand by certain words. And you also need to know words about us. So if I say Salafi, right, or Wahhabi, I mean sometimes you get insulted, or Ikhwan, or Daesh. So what does it mean? What do these words mean? Or if I talk about words, using medical language, let's say euthanasia, mercy killing, abortion, gene therapy, right? Lethal injections. Okay, let's say, all these, aren't they related to Islam? No, they're totally related. Can you kill somebody in Islam? Is it allowed to kill someone? Okay, what about euthanasia? Mercy killing. Can you use lethal injection to kill somebody because they are terminally ill, they have got cancer, they have you doctors say they're going to live for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, and they're in horrible pain. You're giving them morphine injections. So, in order to ease their suffering, are you allowed to kill them? Are you sure about that? What about somebody who, if you let them live, it's going to spread disease to others.
Keep him in.
You can't quarantine them. Maybe it's Ebola. It's a massive issue. The only way to stop the disease there is to eliminate.
You put him in isolation room.
What if you can't put them in an isolation room? You don't have the facilities. You don't have the resources.
Just go. Just killing.
Because if you're studying epidemiology, you may come across scenarios where you have an entire village infected. There's no way to quarantine the village. There's no way to stop these people from leaving the village and going somewhere else. Maybe it's birds that will carry. Maybe it's airborne disease. And if the winds pick up, it's going to transfer to another village. Your only choice is to drop a bomb and burn the whole place, incinerate it. Now what do you do? Is that allowed? Islamically, are you allowed? What do your shuyukh say? But it can happen, right?
Yes.
It's not that, medically I'm saying, I'm giving you examples that you're familiar with. Right? So my point is that there are many things in the world today that we deal with. WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. So did Saddam have weapons of mass destruction? First we need to know what is a weapon of mass destruction. Right? So the point is that these are all things that you deal with on a daily basis. Social media, what is social media? How do you define social media? How is that important to Islam? You say, well, it's not important to Islam. No, it is. Everybody uses it. You can't go to a masjid today and pray a salah without somebody's phone ringing. As annoying as that might be, but that's the reality of the world we live in today. How many times do you go to a restaurant and you see the father, the mother, and the children, each one on their own devices? All the time. How much time does that take away from us? Think about it. Would you accept as medical professions if I told you that that's actually a drug? That this phone you use is actually a drug? Every time your phone rings, every time you get a tweet, every time you get an Instagram message, every time you get a WhatsApp message, what's your tendency? What will you do?
Check. Respond.
Respond. Check. Check first, then respond. Why? 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 Amal, you're medical. No, you don't have to. Why? There's a reason behind it. There's a scientific medical explanation for it. Why?
Addiction.
Aha. Conditioning. Aha. Two words that you use there. One condition, the other one addiction. How is it an addiction? How is it conditioning?
You get used to it. You have
Okay, conditioning is what? Explain to the others what conditioning is.
Conditioning is the more the ideas associate together,
Yeah.
the more they work.
So you ring the Pavlovian bell and the dog will salivate, right? For the rest of you who are not familiar with this is back a century ago or so, Russian scientist Pavlov came up with this idea of conditioning, where let's say every time you want to eat something, what you will do is you will go wash your hands first. And when you start washing your hands to go and eat, because you're used to that, every time you start doing that, your mouth will start producing saliva. The saliva helps digest the food. So your brain is conditioned that that act causes this other act.
responding to
encouraging.
So this is conditioning that he's talking about. What's the other thing you said? Addiction. What is meant by addiction? What is an addiction?
well, it's something you used to do it every time,
Obsession.
every day.
Yeah. If you don't do it, you will feel like something's wrong with you. You will actually get sick. Now, how is that conditioning and addiction? The phone. A message comes in, a WhatsApp message comes in. The first thing you want to do is read it.
Directly, you will go on.
Do you know why? Do you know why?
Because you get used to it.
No, that's the conditioning part, but the addiction part. Every time you do that, the pleasure center in your brain is stimulated. Dopamine is released. Little tiny doses of dopamine. And what dopamine causes is makes you feel good. When you don't get that released, you feel bad. It's actually a physical addiction. It's a physiological addiction in your brain. Every time you use that phone, you are enforcing that addiction. Not just conditioning, but a physiological conditioning that takes place. Right? That's actually done. About 3 months ago, you can look up studies done in England that talk about how using WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all this social media and responding to it immediately is something that is a physiological addiction that causes release of dopamine in the brain, and that's why we are all so addicted to it. Now imagine how Steve Jobs, several years ago, when he came up with this horrible machine, he changed how we think, how we behave. He changed society. So isn't that part of what we are all about as Muslims when we're doing da'wah, when we're doing practicing Islam? We should know about these things. So all these words, and you can come up with all your own words that are relevant to your community, your organization. Come up with these words. But don't just come up with the list of words. Define them. So that all of you have the same message. So when you say, what is Islam? Is it submission? Is it surrender? Is it peace? Is it worshipping God? What is Islam? How do you define Islam? Allah, how do you define Allah? Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, how do you define that name, that word? What does it mean to us? Quran, Hadith, Salah, Zakah, Hajj, Saum, Jihad. Is it holy war? Is there such a thing in Islam? Is it or is it not? No. I'm not going to answer these questions right now. This is all for you guys to figure out. Because like I said, there are many versions. Depends, you're Salafi, Ikhwan, Daesh, whatever. Right? All the different sects that are out there. Or that depends on which sheikh or the group of shuyukh that you go after. It all depends. But you need to, as a group, come together, have a common understanding. These are the words that are important to us. So this is the list of words. Then that list of words you need to define. Base that definition on the Quran. Provide the dalil, the proof for it, from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the scholars, from the ijma, the consensus of scholars. Then have a position about it. So if you say abortion is haram, it's prohibited in Islam, what are the conditions for that prohibition? Why? Why is it prohibited? Is it prohibited? Yes or no? Are there times when it could be permissible? What are the conditions where it is permissible? So if somebody comes to you in your, setting, in the medical setting, and says, it's an Indian woman, a maid, who's, for some reason or other, she got pregnant. Now she wants to get rid of the child, because if she keeps that child, she's in trouble. Now you have an opportunity to do da'wah there. How are you going to do da'wah? You need to have these definitions in place, and you have to have a position about them, because it's important that we have standardized da'wah. That if you go to one person and that person tells you this is what Islam is, you go to the other person, they tell you the same thing. At least within your own organization you have to have that. You have to have that unity of message. So this is why these lists are important. When I talk about what is your product, you need to know your product. You need to define your product, you need to define your market. Any questions? Okay, good? Inshallah. Let's move on. Last part. Do you want to take a break or we just go on to the next part? I'm sorry?
So exactly, we should always have evidence.
It is good. It is excellent to have proof. You may not have it all the time, but it's excellent to have. And we will now talk about this last part. And this is where we'll talk more about these issues. Okay, we're at 12:30 almost. I'm going to try to finish this in half an hour if I can, inshallah. It's already time for Dhuhr. We want to go for Dhuhr prayers soon, inshallah. And I believe you have a lunch invitation that you've all been invited to, if I'm not mistaken. That's what Brother Zuhair told me. So this last session, I'm going to try to keep it short and fast. Ideally, I would like to spend at least an hour on it, but given the lack of time, we'll do it this way. Again, back to that same verse. Very important. That's why I ask you to look at it again. Wisdom, inspiring speech. Reason, using rationale, using good arguments. 1 + 1 is always 2. Can't be 1 + 1 is 4. Don't ask people to take a leap of faith unless if it's absolutely and utterly necessary. But give them evidence, give them proof, give them ways, build up. That's what this verse is telling you. Also have humility. Moving on. Some general tips for da'wah. Okay, first thing. Everything is by intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Everything is by intention. If your intention is to go get married, then that is what you get rewarded for. If you make the journey to get married, if you make the journey for this deen, then you get rewarded for it. So your da'wah, if it is there so that people say, oh, he's such a great sheikh, he's such a great da'i, he's such a good Muslim, look at him, he's doing great work, you'll get rewarded for it in this dunya. People will talk about you. In the akhirah, you will not get it. First thing is intention. So you have to keep on cleansing your intention. And you have to do it all the time. Because it's very easy to feel really good. I'm so good, I'm something, man. So intention, very important. Can you teach anything to anybody if you don't know it yourself? No. Convey this message even if it is with one ayah. Right? But if you don't even know that one ayah, what are you going to convey? Nothing. So knowledge has to be grounded in knowledge. You have to know in order to teach. You can't really teach, you can't invite, you can't educate, you can't inform without knowing it yourself. So knowledge is very, very important. Wisdom. First you listen. In any situation, you listen. You take in the information. Using computer terminology, it's all the different ways in which you put data in. Right? Input. So first is input, before you have output. What is the next thing after input? Processing. Processing. What is processing? Learn and understand. Right? One way of defining wisdom is knowing what to say, when to say, how to say. It's also what not to say, when not to say, why not to say. All these are part of wisdom. So wisdom, knowledge is there. Okay? But knowledge does not mean you go and just, verbal diarrhea. Go ahead and just give them everything, just spit it out. No. You got to have wisdom behind it. So somebody comes to your masjid, to your mosque. It's a young person who's tattooed, got an earring, maybe wearing a horrible t-shirt. What are you going to tell the brother? He's a Muslim, wearing shorts, for the first time in the masjid. What will you do? But no, brother, you can't pray. Haram. Look at you, the way you're dressed. Go.
I will welcome. Welcoming him.
Wisdom means welcoming him. Wisdom means saying, okay, fine, no problem, go ahead, pray. Don't judge him. And maybe get a chance. Invite him. A few times he's come over. Say, brother, if you wear longer shorts, it'll be better. People will not stare at you the way they are. Don't tell him it's haram. Don't tell him it's wrong. That's wisdom. Slowly. Knowing what to say. If a friend of yours comes along and says, I've done a horrible thing. I have a girlfriend. And she's Filipino. Or she's Ethiopian or something like that. And I'm worried I did something wrong and all. What are you going to judge that person? That's wisdom, you see? How you deal with that situation. Every situation is different. Listen, learn, understand. In medical terms, what are you doing?
Treat.
No, before you treat, what do you do? Diagnose. Right? You can't treat. You don't go ahead and give amoxicillin before you know what it is, right? Correct? So first you need to examine the patient. Take a history down. Go through the interview. Okay, what is it? Is it hurting here? Yes, it is. Why is it hurting? Because you keep on hitting yourself here. So of course it'll hurt, right? Tell him to stop hurting himself that way. But you can only prescribe once you know what the ailment is. And you have to keep on adjusting your treatment based on the response that the patient is giving you. Right? Allergic reaction, you need to change the drug. You need to stop what you're giving. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Using computer terminology. Input, process, then output. If your input is not good and you're processing there's something wrong, your output will definitely be bad. So, clear, understood, wisdom. Moving on. Practice what you teach or what you preach. If I don't pray, I can't tell other people to pray. I have to pray. I have to believe first. Because it'll be obvious. People that you reach out to, if you don't really believe in those things and you talk to them about them, they're not going to sink in. People will see through you, and Allah will make sure that they see through you. So, first impressions. You're already tired, it's been a long night, you've been studying for exams, okay, next day morning you come to the masjid and you look like a total wreck. The first person that you meet, the tourists that you meet and all, and what impression are you creating there? Okay, so you did not brush your teeth this morning. You did not comb your hair nicely, you know. You got some serious issues with that armpit. You know, the moment you raise your hands like this and everybody goes, oof, man, get away from me. That's all first impressions, right? Be smart. Doesn't make a difference. I mean, if you wear a thobe, make sure your thobe is clean. If you wear a suit, make sure it's proper. If you wear shirt and pant, whatever it is, you know, depending on the scenario. I remember one time going to a school, you know, high school, and me and another brother, we were in America. This brother wore a tie and a suit and everything. And I felt I'm going to a school. I wore jeans and a t-shirt. Who do you think related to the students more? Jeans and t-shirt. I was able to talk to them and leave a good impression with them. Because my audience at that time was that group of 20, 25 kids. They were half my age. But I wanted to relate to them. Now, I'm not going to dress in tight jeans and tight t-shirt, that everything is visible. No. I'm going to wear baggy jeans and baggy shirt. Might not be totally in fashion. And I can even use that as an excuse to talk about, break the ice. You know, I don't really know fashion of today. Maybe I can talk about modesty and all in clothing. And I use that as an excuse to talk about that. But you see, first impressions are very, very important, because first impressions is what people leave. When they leave you, that's what they leave with. Okay, keep it simple. This is something that I cannot overemphasize. At the beginning of this session, I told you that I'm going to give you a lot of information. I don't normally do that. But the reason I chose to give you a lot of information is because Brother Zuhair told me that you guys are all very, very smart. And I agree with that you are, mashallah, very, very smart. Alhamdulillah. So, based on that, I'm giving you a lot of information. Ordinarily, I would do this session over a longer period of time. But I want you, when you are reaching out to people, delivering the message, you keep it simple. Just think for a moment that if you walked into a temple and they're telling you about their deen, their way of life, and they start throwing words out at you. Now, for a moment, think, people are coming to the masjid, they want to know about Islam. Assalamu alaikum, already 3 words there, they don't know what they mean. You know, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Inshallah. Okay, what is this guy talking about? Everything is Allah, Allah, Allah. What does this mean? Okay? Then you say, oh, you know, Salah, Zakah, Hajj, Saum, you know, all these words. What do these words mean? Use words that people understand. Keep it simple, keep it short, keep it easy. Okay? You're not there to convert. We talked about this before, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. You know that. Your job is not there to convert, it is to convey. Moving on. More tips. Be gentle, be honest, be sincere. These are very basic things. All of us know them. But I'm just reminding you, myself and you all, you have to love Allah's creation in order to be able to reach out to them. If you think the person that you're reaching out to is dirty, how are you going to relate to that person? You have to have genuine affection. These are all Allah's creation. Think about it. Think about it for a moment. Okay? Every one of us is Allah's creation. We are the best of Allah's creation, which means even a drunk on the street is still the best of Allah's creation. Right. And we don't know what standing that person has in the eyes of Allah. Maybe that person is better than the biggest sheikh that we can meet. But yet, just imagine when you meet some president or some minister or some big sheikh that you really admire, how do you talk to that person?
Humbly, on gentleness.
But why is it that when we talk to some of these laborers, we don't talk that way? Think about it. Yes, brother.
We talk to them, we stand on the same shoes as them. What do we say? Oops. Well, exactly what I mean to say is we're going to their level of understanding.
And what is their level of understanding?
Based on how much simple words that they can understand.
Okay, now by saying that, you've already judged them. You see what you've already done? You've already judged them that their level of understanding is below you. You're already looking down at them. You got to be careful of that. You have to have real affection, real love for people. See, you have to really care about that other person, because if you don't help them, if you don't reach out to them with this message of Islam, maybe, Allah knows best, maybe they will go to hellfire. And you don't want that for them.
Sympathy.
More than sympathy. What you doctors would know as empathy.
Sympathy, it's real. You feel it like a real.
Yeah, empathy is even more than that. Empathy is where you are in their shoes. But not just empathy. I mean, think about it. When we are told that Allah is Rahman, what's the meaning of Rahman? How big a word is that? It encompasses love. It encompasses far more than that. Those are the qualities that we should have. Those are the virtues that we should have. When we reach out to people, it should be with a lot of love, affection, and a lot of respect and honor, because that person is Allah's creation. That person is the best of Allah's creation. And Allah loves that person, just the way Allah loves us. And just the way we think we're important, I think I'm the most important person in the world. So does that person. A person maybe has a wife, maybe has children, maybe for sure has a mother and father. And that person is the product of generations. Think about it for a moment. Again, using a medical terminology, the genes that that person carries have been coming for generations. He's the culmination, the end point of all that gene pool that was there before him. Right? So, each and every person is important. And we should treat them with that love, that understanding. Next is message of hope. Give people something positive. Something they can look forward to. Don't just warn them and put them down and say haram, haram, haram. No. Show them that almost everything is halal. Very few things are haram. Give them something that they can look forward to. If you're positive, they will respond to you more. Give them a message of hope. Start with things that you have in common. Deal with commonalities. You know, if you go in there and you start with the differences, you will never get away from that. But if you think about it for a moment, you know, we have more in common than different. The bulk of the religions, it's almost the same. There's very little differences. The differences, the important differences. I'm not saying they're not important, but don't start with those differences. Start with all the commonality we have. When you think about it for a moment, we're all human beings. We all want to eat. We all want to drink. If you don't eat for a day or two, how will you feel? That's the same way the other person feels. No different. You don't drink for a while and you'll feel thirsty, just like that other person will feel. If it gets too hot, he'll feel hot, you feel hot. Too cold, same way. If you've not had enough sleep, don't sleep for 2 days, see what your condition is. Same with the other person. See how much we have in common already. Just the way that person wants to be appreciated, wants somebody to love him, wants somebody to respect him, treat him well, the way you are. So we have so much in common. In terms of belief, it's the same thing. Everybody wants good. So start with those commonalities. I remember many times when I go to, like if I'm in a corporate setting, I'm dealing with businessmen and everything. One of the first things I'll start off with is talking about taxes. If people are about my age and everything, I'll talk about taxes. This is in America. Here, no taxes. There we have taxes. Right? I'll talk about taxes because everybody talks about taxes. Everybody is upset about taxes. I'll talk about traffic because traffic is a huge issue. And if they're parents like me, I'll talk about raising kids. They're concerned about their kids just the way I am. They're concerned about drugs, they're concerned about alcohol, they're concerned about boyfriends and girlfriends. I am concerned about the same things. Those are the things I'm concerned about. So we talk about those common things before we talk about the differences. So start with commonalities, and don't even have to be about religion, they could be about anything. But you build that relationship with them, have that connection with them. When that connection is established, it's so much easier to provide the information. Avoid arguments. As much as possible, don't get into arguments, because the moment you argue, your ego takes over, you want to win the argument. Now imagine you've got a setting where you're talking to 20 people, and you're just constantly arguing. You've had a very good presentation on Islam, but then what are people going to leave with? That argument that you made. So, I'll give you an example. I was in an old age home, a retirement home in northern part of Florida, and over 100 people, almost everybody over the age of 70. I was less than about half their age or so. I'm standing there, made a presentation on Islam. At the end of 45 minutes of a talk and everything, I opened the question and answer. One of the persons stood up, and old man, he quoted Arabic newspapers, and he said this and everything. He wanted to have an argument with me about some political issue about Palestine, Israel and all that. At the end of it, I let him finish 2-3 minutes. And then I said, with all due respect, sir, I have no understanding of these issues. Can I have the next question, please? He wanted to argue more, and I'm saying, please forgive me, but I don't really know much about this. I would love to talk to you later. Maybe you can educate me about these issues, but I really don't know much about them. So I cannot answer one way or the other. Please forgive me. And moved on to the next question. That was it. So avoid arguments. Be ready to say, I don't know. Like this example. Don't make up. Don't make up facts. Don't make up answers. Don't think that you have to answer every question. Be ready to say, I don't know. You ask me a question, I have no clue about it, I'll say, I don't know. Or if I'm not sure about it, I'm not sure exactly what the standing of Islam is on this particular issue, I shouldn't go ahead and spread lies. We do that so often and we don't even think about it. In these phones and everything, you get a WhatsApp message from somebody, it looks like a nice thing and everything, you forward it to somebody else without verifying the truth. You don't verify it, you don't make sure this is the truth. You just go and forward it to the next person. Now you spread lies to 20 people, 30 people without even thinking. We do this all the time. Got to be very careful. We say we don't know, we stick to the truth, what we do know. If we don't know, just say I don't know. Pray, and then pray some more. At the end of the day, hidayah is from Allah. Not only is it hidayah from Allah, but also our own standing in front of Allah. You're like a gardener. You put the seeds in there. You then water them, and all that. That praying that you're doing is the watering that you're doing of those seeds. And then Allah is the one that causes the iman to flourish in that person's heart. Have patience. Nuh alayhi salam, how many years?
950 years.
And what does the Quran say? Day and night. How many people accepted Islam? Not even members of his, not some of his family members even, right? Imagine how much patience that would have required, right? And we talk to one person and that person does not want, that person, what is wrong with that guy? He doesn't even want to understand, I'm telling him something so nicely, he's arguing with me. No patience. Trust Allah. Easy to say, very difficult to do. Trust Allah that whatever Allah's plan is still better than whatever else we can think of. In this world we live in, we are constantly bombarded with information against Islam, people attacking us. We have to trust Allah that Allah has a plan. And in this work of da'wah, very important that you trust Allah. Now let's talk about direct da'wah. Direct da'wah is when you are the one who is directly relating to the other person, you're delivering the message. Indirect da'wah, I talked about this earlier today. Indirect da'wah is where you're using some kind of medium, some kind of vehicle to deliver the message, like a book, a pamphlet, a magazine, a video, a website, a WhatsApp message. That's indirect da'wah. Direct da'wah is where you're the one who's directly talking to people. There are two kinds, one-on-one and one with many. One-on-one is where you're talking to one person. You get a tourist in the mosque, you're talking to that person one-on-one. And there are many opportunities. You're traveling on an aircraft, you get the chance to talk to somebody next to you. Somebody walks into the masjid, you get the opportunity. So there are many opportunities. Wisdom, listen, listen, listen. You learn from that person. The more you listen to that person, the more likely that person is going to open up to you. Just like in medicine, you've got to assess the condition of the patient. The same applies here. Assess the need. What do they need? And based on that need, do you provide a solution? Don't give them too much. You overdose, you're going to kill, right? You have to provide the right amount of a response, proportionate response, a response that is appropriate to what the person asked. The person asked you, where can I get a glass of water, or where can I get some water, and you tell him about Tawheed. Oh, because it's an opportunity for me to talk with this non-Muslim about Islam. Let me go ahead and talk to him. No, the guy asked you, where can I get some water? So take him to where the water is, give him water. Right? Don't tell him about the masjid at that time. Don't tell him about salah at that time. Don't tell him about zakah. When you're already talking about divorce, and the person just asked for a cup of water. Right? Okay. Do not overdose. Don't give too much. If you give too much, you'll scare the person. No information overkill. Do not quarrel, do not fight, do not abuse, do not think that you're better than that person, patronize, that's what it means. Provide closure. What do I mean by closure? Once you've given some information, give that person the opportunity to get back to you. Leave that person with some information, some way of reaching back to you or finding out more if they want to. A pamphlet, a business card, a website, anything. But make sure it is something that they want. Don't force it on them. Always leave the door open. Don't close it off. Don't end off in such a way that the person will not want to learn more. Provide the opportunity for that person, so leave the door open for more questions. Okay, the second kind is again direct da'wah, but this time you're addressing a larger group of people. You've got a group of tourists that have come to the mosque, you've got a large audience, you're speaking to a big group of people. You need to break the ice. You need to connect with those people, but a large group of people. So you need to somehow get into their minds as fast as possible. This is what is meant by breaking the ice. Establish a relationship, a connection. But you're dealing with a large group of people, it's difficult. So you need to try to gauge where each person is as best as possible, as fast as possible, and establish that connection with them. Establish that bond. Personal demeanor, meaning how do you carry yourself? Are you somebody that they would feel comfortable with or not? Like I gave you the example earlier of dressing in jeans and a t-shirt when you go to a classroom, because the kids there would be able to relate to you. That's what I mean by personal demeanor. Start with things that you have in common. Again, we said this before, I'm repeating it again. Keep it simple, keep it short, engage the audience. These are things that I'm not doing right now, so I apologize for that. But we're trying to do a lot in a short time, but you are to keep it short. You are to keep it simple. Engage the audience, get them involved, have a discussion like we did earlier. I asked you questions, you give me the answers. Get your audience engaged. Let them talk about what they want. Provide venue for more information. Provide a website, provide a phone number, provide an email address, provide a Twitter account, whatever it might be, Facebook page. Indirect da'wah. Remember we talked about segment, target, and position? So think about what angle you're going to use based on once you've segmented, targeted, and put yourself in a particular position with that pizza that you're going to eat. So you need to know the angle, the approach that you're going to have. When you're putting together, indirect da'wah means using a vehicle, like a book, a magazine, a website, a WhatsApp message. So you're using that vehicle to deliver the message. The second thing is inverse pyramid. Start with the most important. You know what a pyramid looks like, right? Like a triangle, right? With a big base and a narrow top. The vertex is on top, the base on the bottom. You flip it over. So top the biggest, at the bottom is the smallest. Whenever you're telling any story in media of any sort, you start with the most important thing first. And then you make it less important, less important, less important. Because you don't know if people are going to go through your whole thing. They're going to watch your whole YouTube clip? Maybe not. Are they going to listen to, read your entire message that you've sent? Maybe not. So keep the most important at the top. Lead with the important story. Get it? Keep it simple. I've repeated it a couple of times now. I think it should have sunk in. Keep it simple. No information overkill. Don't overdose. Same thing. Relate to local people and places. If you tell people about something that happened very far away, they will not relate to it. So relate to what is important for them. Provide, again, same thing like before, provide closure, provide information, how they can reach, how they can get more information. You're putting a pamphlet together about something, provide an address at the bottom, something that they can go back to when they're done with this. Moving on. Indirect da'wah, there's two kinds. There's the paid kind and the free kind. The paid kind is advertising. So very quickly, traditional media is print, radio, TV, film. New media is internet, social media. I'm not going to deal too much with this. Just for you to know that there are these different, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, just reminding you that these are different kinds of media, and each one of them has their pluses and minuses. So as a community, as a group of people who are doing da'wah, you should be well aware of what these are. Indirect, where you are not paying for it, you get it for free, is called publicity. It's typically related to an event or an incident or something that you put together, an opening of a center, an opening of a new masjid, some event, or if like let's say for example, if it's where tourists are visiting your mosque, that is free. You know, you're getting the opportunity to do that publicity. But sometimes you're not in control, especially if it is something that happened in another part of the world or even in your own community. It's an event that happened, you're not in control. You have to be smart about how to use media. Stick to your message. Keep repeating. Again, this is all related to, I'm not sure if it really works with the community or the da'wah work that you're doing. That's why I'm going through it very fast. If it does, then stop me and I will take more time and explain each one. But my understanding is it's not really your end of things. So that's why I'm going very fast through it. Stick to your message. Make sure that you repeat the message as many times as you can. Do not argue, do not fight. Be consistent, simple, straightforward message. Try to have one person who will deal with media. Don't have a lot of different people, that way you get different messages sent out. Control publicity, what I mean by that is making sure that when you have an event, an incident that takes place, and you've got to make sure that that people in your own community are not going and taking steps around you, that you are the one who's controlling the entire situation. Because if you get somebody who's not trained properly and goes and speaks in front of media, it would have disastrous results for your da'wah efforts in your organization. Communal da'wah, this is what you're about. If you're a group of people that come together, that's what I mean by communal da'wah. It's not one person going, but you're organizing yourself. Now here it's very important that you are organized, that you talk to one another, that you form a group. You have a strong leader, somebody who takes the lead at the front. You have good research, you know what the market is about, you know what the product is about. You've done a good SWOT analysis. You looked at your strengths, your weaknesses as an organization, the opportunities that you have and the threats that you face. Could be visits like mosques, mosque tours that you have. Could be schools, could be labor camps, whatever it might be. You need to standardize the da'wah efforts that you're having, so that all of you are talking the same language. Again, we talked about this before. When I gave you that list of all those terms, this is what I mean by standardizing your da'wah. That all of you are talking the same language. You know, one of you says one thing about Isa alayhi salam, another one says something else about Isa alayhi salam. One says one thing about jihad, another one says something else about jihad. Shouldn't be that way. Everybody's giving the same message. Standardize as much as you can. And again, follow up. Provide closure, provide information. Make sure that you do follow up with people. I'll leave you with a few examples. This is pretty much the end of it. We have 5 more minutes, inshallah. So I'll keep this even short. These are real examples of, alhamdulillah, in the last 20 years, we've had many, many opportunities, many examples of da'wah situations and people accepting Islam and everything. I've chosen these 4 for particular reasons to illustrate all the different tips I gave you. I gave you a whole bunch of tips in the art of da'wah, and I also talked about media, indirect da'wah, direct da'wah, and all that. Now these kind of relate to all those different things that we talked about. They kind of bring it together in real life examples. So the first example is about this Hispanic female student. Hispanic is people of Spanish origin, people who speak Spanish as a language. I was invited to a university. There's about 120 students, 130 students or so, and I was asked to make a presentation on Islam. So I stood there, gave a lecture for about 40 minutes, and then kept it open for question answers, another 40 minutes or so of Q&A. There was a class of I think it was social studies of some sort, but a university class, and the professor had asked me to talk about Islam. So at the end of it, question answer time, and different questions came up, and this woman put up her hand, and she was Hispanic, of Spanish origin. She was very poorly dressed, if you know what I mean. Like she had like very little clothing on. So she's asking me questions, so I answer, and she asks me more questions. She keeps on asking questions, one after the other. And I try to answer as many questions as possible. At one time she says, look at me, I'm beautiful. You know, you say as a Muslim that I should cover myself. Ya Rahmatullah. Why should I cover myself? I'm so good, I look good. You know, look at me, I'm beautiful. And she says it like that. And I explained to her and everything. Eventually the professor, because she kept on asking questions, and she wasn't giving others the opportunity to ask. So the professor stops and says, can we get others to ask questions? So she sat down, others asked questions. When the lecture and the question answer session was over, she came to me. Professor's next to me, she comes to me and she's asking more questions. I'm going up against the wall because the sister keeps coming closer and closer to me. Finally, I'm right up against the wall, you know, and she's still asking me questions, and she's right here. I'm feeling very uncomfortable. The professor leads me away and says, you know, maybe some other time. She still has more questions to ask, and I try as much as possible. You know, brother, sister, she's not well dressed and everything. I was feeling very uncomfortable. So I went away. On Friday, went to the masjid, I'm parking my car, and somebody says hi to me, a woman. Now normally women don't say hi to the men in the masjid parking lot. That's not normal practice. So I'm surprised, I look. I'm worried also that my wife is with me. And I look, and it's the same woman. This Hispanic woman. And she's got a scarf on her head. She's not as badly dressed. She's still wearing, you know, Western outfit, a skirt and all, but it's a bit of a longer skirt, not something short. I said, oh, hi. She says, I've come to check this place out. I said, good. Okay, excellent. For the next 8 weeks, I see her. Every Friday. And every Friday, she's more dressed. She's got better clothes. The 8th week, she again talks to me. I said, I really like this thing. I think I'm going to go for it. And she accepted Islam. Alhamdulillah. The point is that sometimes you'll get people who will be very, very annoying. They will ask you the most difficult questions, and they will want to ask more and more questions. The reason they are asking those questions is because something inside them has snapped. Remember when we talk about SWOT, there's a vacuum there. They have a vacuum in their hearts and minds. And this world that they live in doesn't make sense. You know, and what you are saying is kind of making sense, but not really. So they are asking the question, why? Why? You know, and they want more and more answers. Those are the people who are the closest to Islam. They are the ones most likely to accept Islam. So you have to be patient, and you have to understand, and you have to provide the appropriate response to them. Second example is of a radio talk show host. After 9/11, in our community in Florida, we had a lot of people who were against Islam, some who were for, many against. And there was this one particular radio show host. His name was Shannon Burke. And he had a radio show every morning during drive time from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. He would have a show that he's talking on the radio. And after 9/11, he started attacking Islam and Muslims in that show. Now, as a community, our response was always that if somebody is in the media, we're not going to respond to that person, because they control the media. So if we call that person up or end up on his show, all we are going to do is give him more ammunition, more ways of attacking us. So the best way for us is, this guy is barking, let him bark. He will stop barking at some point in time. And just the way an animal, a dog, keeps barking, just leave him. A few weeks later, it will die off. And if we respond to him, he'll become bigger and bigger. Now that's our standard attitude to it, because they control the media, we don't. They can shut us off anytime they want. If we call in the radio show and we say certain things, we're trying to defend Islam, he doesn't like it, he'll just turn it off and continue saying what he wants to say. But we will give him more ammunition. So we keep quiet. Some members of our community did not feel that way. They felt like this guy, we should attack him. We should go on his air. So initially, this guy allowed them. And he's smart. He's a radio guy. He's been in the business for years. He knew that this is a way for him to increase his rating. So he let these guys on the show. And initially, he was very nice to them. But then he became very nasty with them. And he started attacking even more. And these guys were totally butchered on the radio show. His audience went from about 150, 180,000 to over 400,000 within 3 months. He became one of the most popular radio show hosts in all of the southern part of the US. The southeast United States, he became the most popular radio show host within a few months because of him attacking Islam. All right-wing neocons, George Bush kind, all of them listening to him. It got to a point where he now specifically attacked our community, said this particular mosque, there is a school there, and in the school they're training terrorists. Now it became too much. He's now creating a threat for us, where our security, the security of our children is at stake. So what we did, the Imam of the community and myself, the two of us arranged through a friend's friend to meet this radio show host for lunch. So we organized a lunch with him. We took him out to a nice restaurant. We sat with him and said, okay, what's the problem? He said a whole bunch of different things. We said, okay, fine. Can you give us the opportunity? You talked about our mosque and our school being a terrorist organization. Give us an opportunity to show you. So he was open-minded enough. He said, okay, fine. So he came to the mosque the next day. He spent the whole afternoon. He originally came for half an hour. He spent like 7 hours with us. Went and saw the school. Went to the classrooms, the kindergarten, little kids shaking his hands. I said, these are the terrorists you're talking about? Look what we're teaching them. Go, look at our syllabus. Open all the books that we have. Look in the cupboards. We've got guns in there. Check them out. This man was so embarrassed. That day, he just completely turned around. Instead of being an enemy of Islam, he became a proponent of Islam. We became good friends. But he told me something very important. He says, Muhammad, the reason I was like this is because I didn't have any Muslim friends. We became friends, me and him. I'd invite him over for dinner at my place. He invited me to his place. He started coming regularly to the mosque to play volleyball with us. Once a week we had volleyball, and he loved volleyball, so he would come and play with us. He didn't become Muslim, or maybe he did, Allah knows best. But at that time he had not accepted Islam. But this man became somebody who goes on the air and speaks positive about Islam. And what he said was that I now have a friend. I have friends who are Muslim. I understand what you're all about. He goes, why aren't you people out there in the community? Why aren't you out there playing soccer with our kids? Be with us, talk to us. If you know us and we are here, if you don't reach out to us, how will we know what you're all about? When you don't know something, you think the worst of it. The moment you put on the light, everything is bright and nice and looks nice. But if it's dark, you're scared. So we were very scary for him. But the moment we opened the door for him the right way, with wisdom, with hikmah, it changed everything. The third is Katrina.
The name of the host again?
Shannon Burke. I don't have time, but I actually have an interview of him on the air of what he said about Islam. In one of my films, I've put him in that film. So next one, Katrina. Remember back in, I think it was 2004 or 2005, I think it was, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. And most of Louisiana and the southern part of Georgia and all parts of northern parts of Florida all were massively hit by Hurricane Katrina. One of the biggest natural disasters the US has ever had. Now, at that time, when this hurricane hit, many parts of Louisiana were totally flooded. New Orleans was totally underwater. And there were entire sections of the city that were not accessible by people. What we did as a community at that time is said that we need to help these brothers and sisters of ours. Whether they are Muslim or not doesn't make a difference, but we need to help them. and reach out to them. So we put together a team of doctors. We have a large number of physicians in our community, health workers, volunteers of different sort, and we put a convoy of one 40-foot truck and a van with people. And in the truck we put, container truck, we put inside it food, medicines, clothing, those, the things that they use to cut the trees with, power saws and axes. Because what happens in a hurricane is the trees fall on entrances, on cars and everything, and people are trapped. So you need to carry heavy duty equipment to free those people. So as our convoy was going towards Louisiana, we were stopped halfway through. We were not able to go all the way to New Orleans. They stopped us, and the police said that the rest of the roads are inaccessible. You can't reach those. So he said, we have, supplies, equipment and everything. We can help these people. They said there's another community in this side, small towns that nobody's been able to reach them, but you can go there. The roads are a bit safer. So our convoy went to this tiny little town. We get to the town and the place is deserted. It's a little tiny American town. Main street, houses on both sides, and the place is totally devastated. Water up to about your knees and all. Trees all over the place, cars broken down and everything. Looks horrible. And nobody in the streets, nobody in the houses. Go and knock on the houses, there's nobody there. So wondering what happened. We keep driving and we come to a church. That's where there's some noise going on. So we realized everybody's in the church. So now imagine this, picture this, right? A group of Muslim brothers, beards and all, some of them with kufis, hats, caps, okay? They are walking in, and because the place was, with trees and all fallen, some of them are carrying those power saws, some have axes, and they're breaking it down and they go inside into a church where most of these are Southerners. They hate Muslims, they are against Muslims. Southern Baptist Church. Southern Baptists not only hate Muslims, we are at the bottom of their thing, they hate other Christians. They think all those Christians are going to go to hell. And of course Muslims are going to go to the bottom of the hell. Right? So these Southern Baptists, they're sitting in the church, and many of them, they're sitting on top of the pews, the places where they have, you have chairs and then you have like little desks. They're sitting on top of that because the place is flooded. And they're all praying, Jesus and all that kind of stuff, right? Send us some saviors. And this is these churchgoers afterwards telling us that they were praying, and this bunch of Muslims carrying these axes and all walk in. A bunch of terrorists come instead of the angels that they expected. Right? And we cleared the place, we cleaned up the place, we helped clean the church, we gave them food, medicine and everything. And they were shocked that Muslims are doing this. So those terrorists were actually angels that came to them. And no, nothing to talk about Islam. We're not here to teach you anything. We're just here to help you. You are our brothers and sisters, we're here to help you. That's it. Very powerful message. Extremely powerful. And this happened on numerous occasions. We had other occasions of similar sort that happened. And people accepted Islam. But my purpose of telling you this story is your actions are much louder than your words. If you act like the Prophet ﷺ, if you act like the Sahabas, if you act like a real Muslim, you don't have to even say a word. Not a single word from your mouth, and the whole world will come to Islam. Because we are Muslim. We've forgotten to be Muslim. And that's why we have no impact. Our words are meaningless. They're useless. They don't carry any weight. Because we are not behaving like Muslims. Last story I have is of this old lady, and this is the one I'm going to end off with. Yes?
Before you continue, I think I have seen a video about this Katrina church.
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if you guys made this or somebody made it.
I think somebody else made this, but I know the story has circulated and people have dramatized it in different ways. Yeah. I know what you're talking about, yeah. But this is a real thing that happened with this church in parts of Louisiana. Anyway, the last story is about an old lady. This is a friend of mine. By profession, he's an imam. And he had this habit of regularly visiting a hospital in the area that he lived in. He lived in Washington, D.C., and he used to go regularly to the different hospitals, just to go and visit the sick. So one time he was in the hospital and he came across this old woman. She's hooked up to all kinds of, like a respirator, and there's some, an IV in her and all that sort of stuff. She's lying there, very old. So he saw her and he passed by her. She was asleep, maybe in a coma, he didn't know. So he went the next day and he saw her again. But there was, other patients had people visiting them during visiting hours. This woman had nobody. She was all alone. So he asked the nurses there at the nurse station, what's the story about this woman? Who is she? So they said that she's brought in from an old age home. And what about her family? No, nobody's visited her. So what's the story with her? She's got cancer. Last stage, terminal. She's here, maybe a few days, a week or two, she may die. So nobody's visited her? No. So this brother went and sat at the foot of her bed. The bed is there, she's lying there. He went and just sat there. For about an hour or two, he just sat there. This woman, she woke up, opened her eyes, saw him, closed her eyes again, and everything. The next day, he came back again. This time, he didn't sit at the foot of the bed. He went and sat closer near her head. And he held her hand. She's an old woman, 80s, don't worry, it's okay. No khalwa issues there. Okay, he held her hand. And she's looking at him, opens her eye, looks at him. Then she's asking him, who are you? But before he says anything, the first thing he says is, Mommy. For some reason, the brother tells me that he says, Mommy. Why did he say those words? He doesn't know up until now. Allah inspired him to say, Mommy. The moment he said that, this woman started crying. And she goes, the last 30 years, I have not heard these words. I have children, and I think I even have grandchildren, but they have not called me Mommy. I have not heard these words. And she's crying. And she's asking him, who are you? He says, I'm a Muslim. So what is a Muslim? So he tells her about the oneness of Allah. He tells her about the Prophet ﷺ. And she says, I like this. How do I become a Muslim? He says, say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. What does that mean? He says, I testify there is only one God, Allah. And I testify that Muhammad is the man. She goes, I believe this. And she says, she took the kalima. She recited the shahadatain. She accepted Islam. He talked to her a little bit. When he was getting late, he left. He says, I'll come back in the afternoon. He goes back in the afternoon. And the bed is empty. There's nobody there. So he asked the nurse, what happened? She goes, the woman died.
She died.
The woman died. She passed away. Brothers, think about this. This is something serious. Allah sent this brother at the right time, and this sister, her whole life, whatever she was, and she accepted Islam, and a few hours later she died. Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So I want to leave you with these kind of stories, you see. This is what we're here for. This is the work that we are engaged in. You are the best nation raised for humankind because you invite people to good and forbid evil. And you are amongst the righteous. You're doing the work of the prophets. You're doing the work of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't forget that. But do it the best that you can with the right intentions. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. If you have any questions, we can take some, inshallah. But this is it. You're done. You're free to go for lunch. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.